Hi everyone, welcome back to Learn With Me. I'm Deborah Hanson, and this is where we do everything AP. So on my channel, you'll find AP Psychology. Now we're doing AP Human Geo, and we're going to also do AP World, and I'm working on some other APs to help you study for the AP exam. So if you find the information helpful, you want to hear from about the new videos coming up, please hit that like and subscribe button for me, and I'm sure you'll get lots of notifications as we're going along, or I'm going along making all these videos. So let's get started on Unit 1.2. On this slide, you're going to see all the important key terms you need to know for 1.2 geographic data. So we're going to go through those on a separate video where I go through the definition, example, AP exam tips for each of those words. And so on this one here, on this video, we're going to talk mostly about the essential knowledge that go with the CED question. As you can see, we have a cat joining us today at Learn With Me, and that would be Clifford. So anyway, he does kind of tend to get into the videos sometimes. So today we're going to go through all the essential knowledge you need to know for 1.2. So how I like to structure the videos is by breaking down the CED questions from the course exam description booklet that the College Board puts out. So each section of Unit 1, or each section of every unit, has a sort of CED question. So today's question is identify different methods of geographic data collection. So we're going to go through all the essential knowledge that you need to know to be able to answer that question, because we know that the College Board uses the CED to create the exams. So if you know how to apply a lot of this essential knowledge, then you can actually do very well on the exam. Let's start by talking about geographic data in AP Human Geography. Geographic data is basically information about people, places, and the environment. This can include things like population, how land is used, weather patterns, or even how different places are connected to each other. Geographers use this kind of data to find patterns and relationships on Earth. For example, by looking at population data, they can figure out where people are moving. And by looking at land use, they can see how cities are expanding. And so by studying weather data, they can understand climate trends. So geographic data isn't just numbers, it's the information that helps us understand how people and places interact on the planet. So now we're going to talk about terrain features. So terrain features are the natural parts of the Earth's surface, like mountains, valleys, hills, rivers, lakes. These landforms are really important because they affect where people live, how they travel, and how they use the land. So for example, mountains can act like barriers that make travel or trade harder, while rivers often become transportation routes and centers of settlement. So by understanding terrain, we can see how humans adapt to their environment, like using fertile valleys for farming, or how they shape the environment by building cities, roads, and bridges. So terrain features connect directly to the way humans interact with the world around them. Let's go over some of the key terrain features in AP Hug. So first we have mountains. These are tall, raised areas of land that form from movements in the Earth's crust or from erosion. Famous examples include the Rockies, the Himalayas, and Mount Everest. Next, valleys. These are low areas between hills or mountains, usually formed by erosion or tectonic activity. Some well-known examples are the Grand Canyon, the Shenandoah Valley, and the Rift Valley. So then we have rivers. Rivers are flowing bodies of water that move from high to low ground. They're important for transportation, farming, and drinking water. Examples include the Amazon, the Nile, and the Mississippi. Lakes are bodies of water that are enclosed by land. They can form in different ways, like from glaciers, erosion, or even by building dams. Examples are Lake Superior, Lake Baikal, and Lake Victoria. And finally, oceans. Oceans are massive bodies of salt water that cover most of the Earth's surface. They're important for marine life, transportation, recreation, and food. The biggest ones include the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. So by looking at these terrain features, we can see how the natural landscape shapes human activity and how people adapt to different environments. Next up, we're going to talk about elevation. Elevation is simply the height of a place above sea level. In human geography, this matters because elevation affects where people live and what they do. So for example, higher areas like mountains are often colder, which makes farming harder. It can also be more difficult to build transportation routes or access resources in high elevations. That's why we see lower population densities in places like the Himalayas compared to fertile lowlands like the Ganges River Valley. So when geographers look at elevation, they're really asking, how does the height of this place change the way people interact with the environment? And remember, elevation isn't just a number on a map. It's a factor that shapes climate, agriculture, transportation, and population patterns. Land use patterns describe how people use land in different ways, like for homes, businesses, farming, parks. Basically, it's how we organize space to meet our needs. These patterns show us where things like cities, farms, and factories are located, and they help geographers understand how people interact with the environment. For example, farming areas might be found in fertile valleys, while business and factories are often clustered in cities. So, by looking at land use patterns, we can see the connections between people, places, and the landscapes around them. So, let's break down the main types of land use in AP Hug. First, we have agricultural land. This is used for growing crops or raising animals like farms, orchards, and vineyards. Next, residential land. These are areas where people live, including houses, apartments, and neighborhoods. Then we have commercial land. This is where businesses take place, like stores, offices, and shopping centers. Then industrial land. This is used for making and storing goods. That includes factories, warehouses, and distribution centers. And finally, there's natural land. This land is kept in its natural state or protected, like forests, parks, and nature reserves. So when geographers look at land use, they're really studying how people organize space for living, working, farming, and for protecting the environment. Next up, we're going to look at population statistics. Population statistics are numbers that tell us about people, like how many they are, where they live, how fast the population is growing, and what groups they belong to, such as age or gender. Geographers use these statistics to understand important trends like migration patterns, birth and death rates, and how populations change over time. So, for example, if a country has a large number of young people, geographers can predict future needs for schools and jobs. If the population is aging, they might focus more on healthcare and retirement systems. So, population statistics gives us the data we need to see how people and societies are changing across the world. So, now let's go over some important population statistics that we need to understand for AP Hug. First, we have total population. That's the total number of people living in a specific area, like a country or city. So, for example, the total population of Canada is about 39 million. Next is population density. This shows how many people live in a certain amount of space, usually per square mile or kilometer. So, cities like New York have a very high population density. Then we look at age structure. This is how a population is divided by age groups like kids, adults, and older people. A country with lots of young people has a youthful age structure. Another key term is gender ratio, the number of males compared to females in a population. So, for example, a ratio of 105 to 100 means 105 males for every 100 females. We also use birth rate, which is the number of babies born each year per 1,000 people. A birth rate of 20 means that 20 babies are born for every 1,000 people in 1 year. The death rate is the number of deaths per 1,000 people in a year. So a death rate of 8 means 8 people die per 1,000 per year. So finally, there's life expectation. Or expectancy, sorry. The average number of years a person is expected to live. For example, in Japan, life expectancy is about 84 years. All of these statistics help geographers understand how populations are growing, changing, and what challenges or opportunities countries might be facing in the future. So next up, we're going to talk about census data in AP Hug. A census is a count of the population that collects detailed information about people in a country. It usually includes things like age, gender, occupation, income, and where people live. So governments collect this data often every 5 or 10 years, and geographers use it to study population size, density, distribution, and change over time. So for example, in the United States, the census helps decide how many seats each state gets in Congress, where to build new schools, and how to plan transportation systems. In AP Hug, census data is a perfect example of quantitative data. It's numbers that can be measured, compared, and mapped. So when you hear census data, think about how counting people and collecting their characteristics helps us understand and plan for the needs of the population. So another thing we need to know for the exam is GIS, or Geographic Information Systems. GIS is a digital tool that helps geographers create smart maps and analyze data. What makes GIS special is that it combines maps with information like population numbers, land use, or roads to show patterns and their relationships. So for example, GIS can be used to figure out the best location for a new school by looking at population density, transportation routes, and nearby neighborhoods. It's also used in city planning, environmental management, and disaster response. So GIS GIS isn't just a map, it's a powerful tool that helps people make decisions about how to use and manage space. So let's look at some of the different ways GIS is used. In farming, GIS helps farmers grow crops more efficiently. It shows where the best soil, weather, and water conditions are, so farmers can make smart decisions about where and when to plant. This process is called precision agriculture. It helps increase crop yields, save water, and reduce waste. So GIS isn't just about maps, it's also a tool that helps make farming more productive and sustainable. So now we're going to talk about how urban planners use GIS. So urban planning is the process of designing and organizing cities so that the space is used wisely and life improves for the people who live there. City planners don't just guess where to put things, they use data and tools like GIS to analyze a city's layout. They look at land use, road networks, population patterns, and the surrounding environment. With that information, planners can decide where to build homes, schools, parks, and roads so that the city is efficient, safe, and livable. So, for example, if a neighborhood is growing quickly, GIS can help planners see where new schools are needed. Or if traffic congestion is a problem, it can help design better road systems or public transit routes. So, in AP Hug, urban planning is a great example of applying geographic data to real life problems. Environmental management is all about protecting natural resources and making sure we use them wisely so they last for future generations. Geographers and environmental scientists often use GIS to track changes in the land. They monitor habitats, they see how human activity is impacting the environment. So, for example, GIS can show where deforestation is happening, how coastlines are eroding, or how wildlife habitats are shrinking. So, with the data, decision makers can plan conservation projects, projects that protect endangered species, and they can design policies to reduce environmental harm. So, in AP Hug, environmental management is a great example of how geographic data can be applied to real world challenges, especially when studying sustainability and human environment interactions. GIS is also used in disaster response. Disaster response is the process of helping people during emergencies like floods, earthquakes, wildfires, or hurricanes. Geographers and emergency managers use GIS to quickly map the area and see what's been damaged, so they can identify where the help is most needed and plan the best rescue routes. For example, after a hurricane, GIS can combine satellite images with road and population data to show which neighborhoods are flooded or which roads are blocked and where emergency shelters are located. This technology helps the emergency teams respond faster, saves lives, and organize relief efforts much more efficiently. So in AP Human Geo, disaster response is a perfect example of how geographic data is also used in real time to solve urgent, life-threatening problems. Now we're going to go over GPS, the Global Positioning System. So GPS is not unfamiliar to any of you, I'm sure. The GPS is a satellite-based system that tells you exactly where you are on Earth, using latitude and longitude and sometimes elevation. It works by connecting to satellites in space. We use GPS every day, like Google Maps. It tracks movement. It makes accurate maps. In AP Hug, GPS helps us study how people move, where things are located, and how different places are connected. So GPS isn't just about directions. It's also a powerful tool for understanding patterns or movement of people and locations in geography. Now we're going to look at how navigation and GPS work. Navigation simply means finding your way from one place to another. GPS makes this much easier by using satellites to tell you exactly where you are. So you're using real-time directions, it shows the best routes, where to avoid the traffic, and can even estimate how long your trip is going to take. I know I use it all the time. It's fabulous for people like me who have a terrible sense of direction. I never know where I'm going. So this really helps. Google Maps, I love it. So it's really important for travel, deliveries, and everyday movement. So navigation with GPS is just more than directions. It's about making movement faster, safer, and much more efficient. So here we're going to talk about transportation and GPS. So how are they used together? GPS helps track vehicles, plan the best routes, and manage deliveries. Companies use it to save time and fuel, improve safety, and give real-time updates to customers about where their packages or rides are. I mean, all of us order packages all the time, so we know when we can track our packages. This makes transportation systems much faster and more efficient. So GPS isn't just about maps, it's also a tool that keeps modern transportation running smoothly, from delivery trucks to rideshare apps. One of the key terms you need to know in AP Hug is remote sensing. Remote sensing is when we collect information about the Earth's surface from far away, usually with satellites or airplanes. It lets geographers take pictures or measure things like land use, vegetation, or city growth without even touching the ground. around. The big advantage is that it helps us track changes over time and to see how people and nature are shaping the world. So, for example, remote sensing can show how a city is expanding, how forests are shrinking, or how farmland is changing. So, now let's talk about how geographers use remote sensing for mapping and monitoring natural resources. So, what this means is they keep track of forests, water, and minerals. So, remote sensing uses satellites and aircraft to take pictures and collect data from far away. So, with this technology, geographers can map where resources are, they can watch the changes over time, they can look at deforestation or shrinking lakes, and then they can better understand how people are using the environment. So, remote sensing gives us a really powerful way to see how natural resources are being managed or sometimes overused on a global scale. Remote sensing is also used to monitor land and land cover. Remote sensing helps us to see how land is changing over time. So, we can see like where cities are growing, farms are expanding, or forests are being cleared. So, by using satellite images, geographers can track where these changes are happening and how fast they're happening and what's causing them. So this kind of data is really useful for smart city planning, for protecting the environment and for really understanding how humans are impacting the land. Remote sensing isn't just about taking pictures, it's about watching the earth and how it's changing in real time. That's all the essential knowledge for the CED question, identify different methods of geographic data collection. So if you found the information helpful and you want to keep seeing these videos, please hit that like and subscribe button. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, I'm also happy to read them. I answer everyone. I'm always happy to hear from people all over the world. So it's wonderful. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you on the next video. See you next time.